Let's go, Angie. You ready to get your pump on?
I'm ready. I'm Sergeant Angie Tetley.
And I'm Constable Brennan Martin.
Usually, you'll find us at recruiting events for the Calgary Police Service.
Like Run with a Recruiter, 49.
Between the two of us, we have over 40 years policing experience.
Over the course of both of our careers, we've met so many amazing coppers.
We want to share their experiences, learn from their challenges and difficult moments, and of course, celebrate their successes.
We're going to hear about real calls and investigations and the impact that they've had on the community and our members. We're also going to explore what led them to policing and get some behind-the-scenes information on the sometimes hilarious and sometimes heartbreaking and traumatic stories that happen every day in our amazing city.
Please join us while we find out why members of the Calgary Police Service have been called to serve.
Woo! I'm fired up. Let's get this going. Let's go, Gino. Jedi Gino, buddy. Fired up to have you here.
Thank you.
I'm impressed with two things, first of all. Well, one thing impresses me, and one thing I was kind of surprised. The thing that impressed me is that you shaved today. You actually trimmed down the ZZ top.
It was rather bushy the last time we talked.
It was.
I
It
saw
grows
you
fast.
in 3 District, and you didn't even know I was there till I texted you. And I looked over, and I was like, did ZZ Top get a job in the 01 vehicle? And then I realized right away that it was you. The other thing is, I noticed on your duty belt, there's no lightsaber bra.
No, not issue.
Listen, I'll tell
When
you.
is that going to happen? When are we going to be issued lightsabers?
I don't know. That'd be a great tool.
What color would your lightsaber
Pink.
be? Yeah, of course.
Obviously.
Gene?
Probably purple.
Yeah. So the people out there don't know. I've told Ange in the past. I consider you a very special person. No doubt I pressed your buttons when we worked together back in the day. But
All in a good way.
like you've done it all. Your perspectives are amazing. Despite the fact that every story that you had to tell, you told me 100 times.
Sorry.
That's all right.
happens when you get old.
Well, and maybe I need to rehear it, but a lot of the information that you gave me in the stories, going back to earlier on in your career, even pre-CPS and when you were a CFD and when you were a paramedic and when you were in STARS. The long and short is that this podcast is called Call to Serve. And so as soon as Ange and I were talking about this, Call to Serve, because we have a whole bunch of different members and police officers within our own agency and people that we've met outside our agency at other agencies that really felt called to serve. And nobody sort of personifies that than Jedi Gino, the Machino. All those things that you've done. Your life has been focused on service, and it's produced a very good life to you. So thank you for being here today. So I'm just going to summarize your 43-year career in emergency services in like a sentence. I don't think that's possible, but I do know that you joined the reserves early on. You were a member of the Highlander Regiment. I know for a fact that you were a paramedic, and you've worked all over the place. I know that you were either the first or one of the first STARS paramedic volunteers, and we'll get into that later on. I know that you were the youngest ever fire captain. With CPS, you've been in patrol, you've been in probe, you've been on the beats, you worked in HIROP, and that you are now a sergeant in 3 District. You've done it all, dude. You've done it all.
It's been busy.
You're one of the people that I respect the most. When I was going through my difficult time, you were the first one to be there. You brought me off of that poplar tree. I appreciate you more than you can possibly know. I'm excited to share you today. We're going to do our best to justify Jedi Gino the Machino, though I'm sure we won't do you justice, but thank you.
Well, thanks for having me here, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Sergeant G. Newcombe.
Yes.
How many years have you been on with CPS?
I'm a 26th year now.
26th year.
Yeah.
Amazing. And still going strong, on patrol. It's
Still going, maybe not quite as strong. Still going.
Fair enough. So we want to hear your story. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up, what your childhood was like, and we'll sort of go through chronologically who Sergeant Gene Newcombe is.
Sounds good. I was born in a small farming community just north of London in Ontario, about 2 kilometers outside of a town called Newcombe, and had a great childhood. We're just in the farmland and the country and running through the woods. It really developed my love of the wilderness. Gave me an appreciation for hard work and built my work ethic early on, just with working on the local farms in the area and chores and, like good
Farm
work
kid.
ethic, farm kid kind of thing, yeah. And I was very blessed that my grandparents on my mother's side lived with us in my early youth. I developed a special relationship with both of them, especially my grandfather.
Grandfather, yeah.
Yeah, he was my hero.
I know that your grandfather served in the military. Do you want to sort of highlight the interesting stuff
Yeah.
that you told me about him?
So Harry was his name, and
Yeah.
he was born in 1892. Just get your head wrapped around that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was very blessed to have known him in the latter part of his life. And he was a soldier in World War I in the trenches, and he was wounded at Vimy. Yeah, he had quite the stories to tell, and he was really inspirational for me in choosing a life of service.
Can you expand on that? Like, how did your relationship with your grandfather set your career in motion?
Well, as a kid, I mean, I loved to hear the war stories, and he would tell me them.
Wow.
And
That's actually kind of rare. Like usually people who've been to war kind of don't want to.
well, he didn't share it with everybody,
Yeah.
but we had a special connection, so he shared with me. I remember him telling me he was laying in the trenches, kind of during some off time of fighting, and he was watching the Red Baron fly above them.
What?
It was the only red airplane in the sky. It was easy to spot him. He actually saw the Red Baron.
That is
That's
incredible.
Yeah.
Trench warfare is it's the worst possible. And
Yeah.
the conditions that they lived in the possible. And
It was. Yeah.
the rights and privileges that we enjoy today are because brave men and women served in our military and were willing to live in the trench for years so that we can
Absolutely.
have what we have.
Yeah, I have nothing but respect for him, and like I said, those original stories, and it goes beyond that too, because he was a humble man. He was a farmer when he came back to Canada after the war, and raised a very large family, 11 children in total, typical farming family. And he did a stint as a baker for a while because he had a passion for that, but it didn't last very long. And just led a good, honest life, a good father to his children, and just was an inspiration to me.
Now, I know that you're a bush guy and that you're a country guy, but somehow you ended up in Calgary. So could you briefly cover that off and just explain to us how you transitioned from Ontario, which is a beautiful province,
It is, yeah.
to Calgary?
Well, when I was about 12, my parents decided to relocate for work purposes and just start fresh, I guess would be the best way to explain it. So, kind of like the Beverly Hillbillies, we loaded up the truck and headed to Calgary, and
Amazing.
off we came. And yeah, it was a weird transition for me. Never heard of a 7-Eleven before, and didn't know what a skateboard was, and was very disappointed that I couldn't go shooting after school like I used to.
I remember that life, Gino. I remember I grew up small town in northern Alberta. I would come home from high school and I grabbed the shotgun, throw it over my shoulder, walk down the street with it, and then into the bush, into the farmer's property that we
was
knew really well.
Normal
and we'd go
life as a
hunting.
kid. All the kids I was friends with in junior high couldn't believe that I had a gun and could go shooting. Well, I couldn't as easily now, but
City folk, eh?
city
Different
folk,
life.
yeah, very different. So, and I have to tell you, it was a hard transition for me. I wasn't very happy
Yeah.
for a while.
Moving to the city.
Moving to the city, yeah. I really
So was that
missed-
when you decided to join the reservists? Was that sort of like
that
a
was
big
years
impact?
later, yeah. So I was 17, and of course you have to have parental permission to join the military at that age. And so, and for me, I didn't know what I was going to get out of it. I just was kind of drawn to the adventure of it and the excitement, and scared to the challenge. But I also wanted to follow my grandfather's footsteps. My uncles too. All my uncles were military men as well in World War II.
So do you think it was in your DNA to start a life of service?
I can trace back my military family decades.
Oh,
Decades
man.
and decades.
That's incredible. Because I do believe that we are called to this job. Tetley was called to this job. It's been in her family as well. My side, there was a lot of military, but I grew up with Master Corporal Martin tossing my room when I didn't have my stuff cleaned up enough, so I went away from it. But looking back on it now, I really feel like I should have joined as a reservist or even just been a full regular force member just to get that life experience.
Yeah, and it really is. It is a life
Because
experience.
you really learn what it's like to depend on the person on the right and left of you, right?
Yeah, and you take, I mean, it was in the early 80s when I joined the military, and I was still in high school at the same time. And I remember when it was probably just a month or so after finishing basic training when the Falklands War broke out.
Were you even alive yet? What year was that?
And that was 81.
I was alive.
Okay.
I was 4.
So at what point did you develop your interest in medicine? Because I know that you went from the reservist and then you started to develop an interest in medicine at the very beginning of your career.
Yeah, so I talked about my grandfather. My grandmother was a nurse.
Oh, that's right.
So again, I remember she helped me build my very first first aid kit when I was a kid, and I was a wolf cub. That was one of the projects we did. So I've had an interest in helping people. And I mean, whether it's medicine or military stuff or it's all service, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I've come to realize something in my latter years around the idea of service, and it is, I think people mistakenly think that the purpose of life is to be happy. And I would say it's not. The purpose of life is to be of service to fellow man.
Wow.
And by achieving that, you develop happiness.
I had that wrote down in here,
byproduct,
Gene.
yeah.
I love that comment because it's totally true.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the process where you became a paramedic.
Yeah, so I was always fascinated with that area as well. And if I'd stayed in the military, I probably would have pursued more of that. But to be perfectly honest, the military in the early 80s wasn't really career worthy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I mean, if I was redoing things, maybe it would be different nowadays. But at the time, it wasn't. And so I pursued that. I tried it, learned a lot, realized it really wasn't for me as a long-term career. So then I went back to school and became a paramedic. And it was tough to get into the program back then. It was kind of a catch-22. You had to either be sponsored by an ambulance service to get in the program, but to get sponsored, you had to be an EMT. So it was kind of a catch-22. So fortunately for me, there was a program that was taught in Northern Alberta called the Wilderness Emergency Medical Technicians course. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a really good program.
It was in Lac La Biche, right?
That's right, yeah. And that was an equivalent, recognized equivalent to the EMT program, so it allowed me to get into the paramedic program.
So after you completed that, where was your first place of employment?
First job was Jasper, Alberta.
Jasper. I love Jasper.
Yeah.
But you probably didn't
Beautiful.
get to see much of it off duty
I was
anyway.
so busy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was the only paramedic for about a 500-kilometer radius around that area. And I'll
One
tell you,
paramedic for
one
a five
paramedic.
in
We had
Jasper.
EMTs too, but I was the highest trained paramedic, and it was quite a year. It was crazy. I did so much work. I remember going 36 hours nonstop calls.
Yeah, because there was no option. There was nobody
There
else
was
to
no
call.
options. Yeah.
You in our pre-meeting, you discussed a story where you saved a little boy and you got a letter years later, the boy in a crevasse. Can you expand on that? Can you tell us about that story? That's
Sure,
super interesting.
Yeah, so that summer a call came in through the warden service of a child that had fallen into an ice crevasse at the Columbia ice field. So my partner and I, rolling hot down the highway in an ambulance is still almost an hour drive.
Yeah.
So time was against us. So as we get there, and the wardens were on scene, they had pulled him out of the ice. Now it was summertime. He was just wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and he slipped and fell into a crevasse and was wedged in the ice with water running over him
Oh my.
for over an hour. So obviously it's a hypothermia case. So anyways, I preheated the back of the ambulance and had some warmed IVs going, knowing what was going to have to happen. And we got the little guy, and he was so cold he'd lost his shiver response, and he was almost dead. And so I tell you, God was smiling at me that day. I was able to get an IV on him because he was so shut down. It was really hard. But I got an IV, I got some warm saline going into him. And I laid on the stretcher and held him. Direct body heat while my partner rolled hot into Jasper. And he started shivering by the time we started pulling up to the town site.
Oh, I have goosebumps.
And anyways, 4 days later in the hospital, made a full recovery and continued on his vacation. He was from the United States.
So that young boy, now a man, now has a family, now gets to impact life, is able to do that because of timing and because of who showed up.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Gene. That is an absolute amazing story. You told me something about receiving a letter.
Yeah, so years later, I was on a STARS mission in Canmore, and I ran into my old boss. Hadn't seen him in years. And he said, where are you living now? I said, well, Calgary. And he said, I have a letter for you. I've been holding on to it for a couple of years.
A couple years?
Yeah. So I gave him my new address, and he sent it to me. And it was a letter from the family celebrating the 17th birthday of this boy. He was 7 when he went into the ice. So they said, we've had him for 10 years, and we were really reflecting on what you did for our family. And it was nice.
So
you don't get that very often.
That's amazing.
I've worked with you for a long time, and I've known you a long time, Gino. And that's one story in a haystack upon haystack upon haystacks of stories that you've told me over the years, and the ones that we've been a part of.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that the public does not get to hear. They get to have the benefit of safe and healthy life because their emergency services are doing the job that they were trained to do. And even within that job, there's people like you that are the Jedi Masters. That's why I call you Jedi Gino. There's Yoda, and then there's you, buddy. And of course, then there's Ange. But she's unique. She's the unicorn, and there's a special story.
How did you work with how did you work with Brennan for so long? Like, are you okay? Like emotionally?
I saw a counselor afterwards.
Yeah,
for a while.
counseling.
Yeah, it was good.
Earmuffs. You actually needed earmuffs, eh?
I played music loud too.
Yes, fair.
And actually, because of you, I got interested in all that old guy music. So now when I hear a Journey,
it's 80s, man. That was the best music.
Now when I hear a Journey, I crank that stuff up, buddy, and that's because of you.
Well, I'm glad I was able to expand your musical vocabulary.
Dude, he's terrible. His taste in music is still terrible. He'll find a song and play it so many times that I want to rip my eyes out because he'll just play it over and over.
I can hardly tell as you run over to the speaker, and then you're shaking your arms and you're looking at me with disgust. I've heard that song 4 times. Like, she has no patience for me. At least you had patience.
I have patience, yes.
Gino,
we need to talk.
I do know that you didn't stay there long. You were only a year there, and then you transitioned to Calgary. Tell us about that and actually how you became involved with STARS.
Yeah, so I was really lucky to get that job in Jasper because it's very hard to get, back in the day, it was very hard to get full-time employment. Usually what happens, medics signed on as on-call or part-time, and then they kind of were trialed and waited for an opening to come up. But I got this job because of my mountaineering background that I was doing as a teenager. But it was a great job up there in Jasper. It was terrible too, just the hours and the pay, and I had student loans to pay, and I delivered 7 babies up there that year, though. That was a good year.
Awesome.
I want it out.
Like, what a year. Like, you were only there for 1 year.
I know, my first year as a medic, I learned so much.
Delivered 7 babies, saved a little boy's life out of an ice crevasse, and probably countless more stories.
There's other stories, but I won't share them all. But it was a good year. So I came back to Calgary, and basically there was a point in time, I think I had 5 part-time jobs just to try to make a living. And I get a phone call one day from a medic that I had met on practicum, and he basically asked me if I wanted to be interested in this new project they were setting up with the helicopter. We'd be able to fly out, and because I had a bit of helicopter experience in the past from my other work, and I said, sure, sounds like a fun thing. Yeah. And that was the beginning of Stars Air Rescue in 1987.
Were you at CFD at that time?
No, I had these 5 jobs going on. And then a couple of years later, CFD hired me.
The memories that you must have from STARS must be incredible, because it is an incredible life-saving emergency service that we are very blessed to have. And to be at the front end of that, it's got to be something you must be really proud of. I was actually looking at a photo, that you had sent us.
Titan
But dude,
photo?
you look young.
Well, I was.
Hunky, like hunk.
Actually, that's actually
I
the
was
word
like,
that Angie.
whoa, hunk alert.
Yeah, I can.
I was like, nice Gene.
I can see why your bride was after Gino or Machino back then. Because you're a good looking dude. Like, not that you're not now. You're just more
I'm just
mature.
old.
Yeah, you're just old.
You change.
How long were you doing your 5 jobs here in Calgary for before you got on with CFD?
A few years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do know that, like one particular story that you told us when you were with CFD was that you jumped in with STARS. It was one of the first times that CFD had worked collaboratively with STARS at that time because it was such a long time ago. And you went to a Hutterite farm in regards to a drowning. Can you tell us that story?
Sure. Yeah, so I had transitioned over to the fire department, and they hired me because of my medical background, but also as a firefighter as well. And I didn't really know it at the time, but I developed a bit of a knack for the rescue business, and so I became a diver after that for the fire, or an aquatic rescue specialist, as we called it. And I had developed a real passion for that. So I was wearing many hats for that organization, but this one particular, I'm thinking it might have been like 90, 92, around that time. Mm-hmm. Sorry, get old, all the numbers blend together, but
I wouldn't know. You guys are way older than me, so like I'm so young compared to you guys.
She loves it.
So I was working at number 1 fire station downtown, which was one of the main dive halls, and the phone rang, just a regular phone. So I put my coffee down, picked it up, and I remember pulling the receiver away from me. It was so loud, siren sound in the background. It was an RCMP officer from Strathmore, and I'm not sure how he got our direct number to the number 1 fire station, but he had it, and he said, I'm heading to the Starlight Hutterite colony for a call, 3 children that had fallen through the ice and drowning, so I need your divers now. So I'm like, okay, I'll see what I can do. And I kept them on the line, hit a button, got all the firefighters and divers down to the office where I was at, and I handed the phone over to one of my fellow divers, said, get all the information you can, talk to the captain, told him what we had, and he said, can you do something with this? I said, I can. He said, well, do it then, I'll back you. He was awesome. So then I picked up another phone and I called STARS. There was a friend of mine that was working that night. He said, I'll meet you at the General Hospital helipad in 10 minutes. Back in those days, we self-launched. So I grabbed another diver, threw all of our dive gear into one of the vehicles, and they drove us to the helipad. Next 5 minutes later, we're in the helicopter flying east. We didn't even know where we were going exactly. We got an update, and it turned out there were 3 children that had fallen through. 2 got out, 1 drowned. So we made a game plan. I was going to be the incident commander when we landed, and the backup diver, so I could keep command of everything. The diver that came with me was going to do the penetration through the ice. My paramedic friend Rob was going to support us, and the nurse partner, she was gonna stay in the helicopter and prepare for the cardiac arrest. And we landed and put all those wheels in motion, and we pulled the little guy out. And I always remember Darcy was the diver. I just saw this little body kind of come out of the ice, and he laid him gently on the surface and spit his regulator out of my mouth and called me. So I ditched my heavy dive gear, crawled across the ice, grabbed the little guy, crawled back, handed him to Rob, who ran him to the helicopter, and they started resuscitating him. I got Darcy out of the ice, and then our plan was we had a ground unit rolling too. I forgot to mention that, but Darcy was going to stay behind with all the gear while the ground unit came and picked him up. And I was switching my hat from diver to paramedic, and then I jumped in the back of the helicopter, and the nurse and the 2 medics, we tried to resuscitate the little guy back to the Children's Hospital. We did everything we could. That night I did the first intraosseous infusion that anyone had ever done at STARS. So that's an IV into a bone. We couldn't get any veins on him.
Oh, wow.
And we landed at the Children's, and the Children's staff was amazing. We worked him for probably about 2 hours, and he died. Couldn't get him back.
But that was the first, because of your experience with STARS and now at CFD, that was the first time there was sort of that collaboration.
That's right. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So the next day I'm asked to see the chief. which is always a nerve-wracking experience. You wonder if you're in trouble or not. And,
Yeah.
And so he asked me to tell him the story, so I did. And I should also interject now, the reason the child, so we used to work on what was called a 90-minute window for cold water near drowning phenomenon. There's been children that have drowned and under that 90-minute window been brought back with good resuscitation efforts after they were rewarmed. So that's why we were working on a rescue angle instead of recovery. What we learned is the reason the boy hadn't died, he'd actually drowned 3 hours earlier. Oh. But the Hutterite colony didn't relay that information. So everyone that was involved from an emergency point of view was under the belief that it had just happened.
Yeah.
So a couple of things came out of it. After I met with the chief, he asked me to set up a program so that this couldn't just rely on luck, that I just happened to be the guy that was on duty that day.
Exactly, yeah.
So we established a helicopter program, which was mainly connected to STARS, then later on connected to the Hawks helicopter after it was formed. And then I went and educated the Hutterite colonies about cold water near drowning and told them to please call us right away kind of thing. So some good stuff came out of it.
Yeah, a terrible tragedy,
It was
but
a tragedy,
like a lot of really amazing follow-up from learning, right?
Yeah.
Amazing.
So the next day, chief calls you up.
Yeah. I go to his office, he wants to hear the story, so I tell him the story, and he looks at me and says, well, that's unacceptable. I go, what do you mean it's unacceptable? And he says, it's unacceptable that we have to rely on the luck that you happen to be on duty that night, and was able to make that call to STARS. He said, I want to get this so that we can have it happen anytime. So we did. And part of that was I ended up in California for 2 weeks doing a heli-ops crew chief course, which was a really fun course.
Of course.
Jumping out of helicopters and stuff. So
I bet.
it was good.
And is that how, so your diving experience, that was sort of your transition to CPS, right? Was that your first, when you were training the TAC guys, is that what happened?
Yeah, so many years later, I took on a leadership role within the rescue area. And one summer I had trained 2 TAC team members in some basic water rescue and diving. And then in turn, they asked me to take on one of the bomb technicians courses. I think at the time, they were concerned about dealing with water-based explosives. So while I was doing that, I connected with some really awesome police officers, and they encouraged me to jump ship and come over to the CPS, which I did.
Amazing.
Yeah. So now you're stuck with me.
That's such a cool transition, I think, that, you know, just you don't think about like the small interactions you have with people that completely change the course of your life. So,
Career path, life path.
Yeah. So this experience you have training the Calgary Police Service tactical team.
Yeah, just luck, it happens.
Yeah. And then you just have a good conversation, ask some personal questions, and
Yeah, and that was about 10 years into the fire department, so I was looking for something. I get bored easy, in case you haven't noticed.
Well, 1998 was when you started recruit classes. What class number was that?
124.
My goodness. What was that experience like, recruit classes? For you back then, right? Because that's a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
Almost 27 years ago.
Honestly, it was just kind of like doing it all over again, because I, basic training in the military, boot camp with the fire department, cutting your teeth as a medic. It's just another repeat of the same old stuff,
Did you find that those experiences, being in the military, being a paramedic, being with the Calgary Fire Department, all helped? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You bring all these skills with you. I'm not a currently registered paramedic anymore because there's no need for me to be, but I still carry all that knowledge. Mm-hmm. And I use it at work, even to this day.
I have no doubt. I know that in 98 you had recruit classes, then you went to 4 district, and it was different in those days. All of our young people now, they don't realize it, but back then there was no 5 district. It was just 4, and it was
huge.
Yeah,
it was a huge. All the districts were really big back then. And my first team was 18 officers and 2 sergeants for one team. Yeah, we didn't have the manpower issues that we have now, but it was interesting. The first call I went on was a stabbing, and I thought, well, this is going to be an interesting career. That was the first call.
Well, people call us when stuff goes sideways, right?
Yeah. So here I am immediately reverting back to my medic stuff, right?
Yeah. But you're like, I have a different role in this job.
It's true, yeah. Yeah, and that was a transition I had to make,
So you were in 4 district, then they got split, and then you went to 5.
I did, yeah.
Is that right? And then were you in probe after that?
I went to 3 after that.
3 after that?
And
district,
loved
yeah.
working in 3 district.
Northwest.
And it was 3 where I really kind of, it's funny. I remember people encouraging me, maybe I should go to the TAC team or something like that because of my background. And I thought, I kind of done that. I wasn't sure where my policing path was going to take me. So for a few years, I was just kind of going out there and taking calls and learning how to be a good police officer.
Nothing wrong with that.
And seeing where it took
part of the
me.
job.
It is the best part because it's funny how things just kind of naturally flow and happen. Well, what I discovered, much to my surprise, is I actually had a bit of a knack for investigations. And so I really started to embrace these more complex calls that were coming in. And anyways, in 3 district, I was offered a year as an acting detective in GIU, and had a great year there. Did some really interesting work, and then from there, I applied to the newly formed criminal intelligence probe team.
What does probe stand for?
It doesn't really. It's the idea behind it was probing intelligence.
Oh, I see.
Getting
It's not an
intelligence.
acronym, yeah.
Yeah, so the idea is a detective or anyone actually could come to our team and say, we've got some information about this thing. We think it might be legit, but we're not 100% sure. Can you guys look at it? So we would probe it
Got it, yes.
and then make files or say, no, there's nothing to it kind of thing. So
You did time in High Rock. After that, you went to the beats where you got to work with the best guy ever.
absolutely.
But prior to my time, you went to a 1001, which is a severe vehicle collision involving injury. And you talked about a female that you tried to assist.
Yeah.
This is the bricks?
Yes.
Yeah, so we have, on your chest right now, you wear your bricks, which is a life-saving award that you got, and that was this story.
Yeah, it was. So, I was working downtown as a beat officer, and we were just driving back to the office, and we actually could hear the crash. We were that close to it, and I'd have to say that was probably one of the worst car accidents I've ever been to, and I've been to a lot over the years. An impaired driver blew through a red light and T-boned a cab that was taking a young lady home from a night with her friends, and hit it about 80 kilometers per hour.
Ugh.
And then the force of that caused the other side of the minivan cab to shear a light standard off. So it was kind of like a double T-bone. And then 2 other cars were impacted. Like the speed of this driver was out of hand, like impaired driving, like crazy, right? So, anyways, we got there and I kind of did we call in resources, EMS, fire, other police officers. It was McLeod Trail and 12th Avenue, so it's a pretty busy intersection.
Yes.
We needed to shut it down, and so it kind of got all those wheels in motion. The district sergeant was coming, and then I kind of said, well, let's see what's going on with everybody. So I looked in the minivan, and at first I could only see one person. It was crushed. They were actually crushed on top of each other, the driver and the young lady that was the passenger. And I couldn't really assess them from where I was at. So some other officers came over with our entry tools, and we basically pried the hatch out of the vehicle, just manually, brute force. Whoa. And I was able to crawl in. And I stayed in the back of that van for almost an hour and a half, keeping both their airways open while the fire department cut the car apart to take them out. I kept them alive for that time. And then the driver was removed and taken to one hospital. I learned later that he died en route. And then I stayed with the young lady, and then we got her out, and then I went with her to the hospital. And again, flipping hats back and forth, I kind of put my medic hat on back in the ambulance and assisted the EMS crew with her care. Got her to the Foothills Hospital. She actually went into cardiac arrest in the trauma bay. The docs brought her back, and then they rushed her up for emergency trauma surgery. Now, while that was going on, I realized that this was very dire. And so now my objective was letting her family know what was happening. And problem was her sister was in Vancouver and her parents were on a weekend vacation down in Montana. So we had to pull a lot of resources to kind of get everyone notified, and we did. and they all left where they were at to come back to Calgary. And anyways, a trauma surgeon came to me afterwards. He said he had done everything he could, but she was going to die. And so I said, well, her parents are on their way. He said, good. So unfortunately, she did pass, but her family was at their bedside before that. So at least we gave them the ability to say goodbye to her. And
Ugh.
it's kind of like the dive stuff. I'll go back to that for a second. Most of the work that I did as a diver was body recovery, not rescue. People would say to me, isn't that kind of a morbid thing to do? And I said, well, it is. That's not my objective. I want to save people. But I said, when someone's drowned and they can no longer be recovered, now who's the victim? Well, it was their family.
Totally.
So my objective was to get their loved one back to them so they could have closure around that. So I kind of feel like I was able to achieve that with this young lady.
Gene, that's what makes you different and special amongst a group of different and special people. I have tremendous respect for you. I've learned a lot from you over the years. I appreciate your patience. Angie's starting to learn the same techniques. But
we'll talk.
Thank you. Need a therapy session.
But
go for coffee.
Yes, please.
Like, I worked with you for a long time. I heard all of your stories beforehand, and I was part of a bunch of your stories, and I've heard a bunch of your stories since. And you've just talked to us regarding 2 or 3 stories, and those are literally parts and pieces of one day. And it is so impressive that, I'm very thankful that you're here to actually share those stories, because it lets the public know that this stuff is done on a daily basis. This is what actually happens.
This is what happens.
This is what happens when people are asleep at night. But one thing I've always wanted to ask you, and I may have asked you, but I can't remember. So you've experienced a tremendous amount of trauma in your career because you've been on the job for 43 years and all these different things. You attended the worst of the worst. You've seen the worst of the worst. How do you personally deal with all the trauma and death that you have dealt with over your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. There was times in my life where I didn't know if I was dealing with it well. I just did. I'll talk about the cliche things. I have an active lifestyle.
Yes, you do.
I have faith in something bigger than me. That's important. There's a reason why we're here, right?
Yeah.
I have a wonderful family, which I'm connected to and I love and appreciate. And they've been so supportive of me. It's tough being a family of a cop. The shift work and the stories and all that.
Missing big events.
Missing big events.
Yep.
Well, for all that stuff, for the paramedic and fire.
Everything, yeah, it's all shift work.
Like you've been doing it forever.
Yeah, 43 years of shift work. Yeah. I'm starting to wear out.
Dude, when I look at you, I don't know if I've ever said this to you either, but I remember thinking about it at the time when we'd be, in our vehicle or walking and doing our job on foot on the beats. I remember looking at you and thinking, I would just look at your eyes and you look like a very wise person. And 100%, and you told me a story afterwards and it totally clicked with me. I feel like I'm looking at the eyes of an eagle.
Well, thank you.
I
That's
want to
part
talk
of that
about,
faith thing.
Yeah, no, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay.
So Brennan, I've worked with Brennan for not even 2 years yet, and he is obsessed, loves a sunrise.
Yeah.
Like he loves sunrises. So I know that there is a special story that you guys share about sunrises. And I think this is why, like we go to Run with a Recruiter every day and it's like I roll my eyes every morning. It's like, oh, we have to take a sunrise picture, everyone. We have to take a
Pony
sunrise
boy, baby,
picture.
hashtag pony boy.
And I'm like, oh my God, like how many sunrises can this man like honestly appreciate? But he like every time he stops and he makes everyone turn around from whatever they're doing, sometimes literally in the middle of our workout, and makes everyone look at the sunrise. So I'd like to hear the sunrise story that you guys share together as partners.
So we were doing our job, foot patrol downtown.
Day shift.
Early morning, and we're just walking through one of the many parks that have many addicted people, and lo and behold, we find somebody laying on the ground. Checked him, and he was deceased. Right in front of
first thing in the morning,
right first thing in
dead
the morning.
body.
Yeah, I haven't even
Dead
had my
body.
coffee.
It's
In
like
the middle of the-
6:15. It's like 6:15, 6:20 Central Memorial Park, which is right near the supervised consumption site.
Right,
The Sheldon Schumer.
Yeah. So, of
So
course,
died of an overdose, likely.
yeah. So I, of course, switched into medic mode and, of course, check his vitals. And he had rigor mortis already. So he had died sometime during the night. So there was no resuscitating him. So we make up a call and let the ME know. So meanwhile, we have to, do a quick cursory look. It looks drug related. I think we found some
There's tons of
paraphernalia around
paraphernalia,
here. Yeah. So nothing suspicious about it. Unfortunately, it's kind of par for the course down there.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there, the fountain's going, it's a beautiful summer morning, and the sun's coming up. And remember, Brennan and I are sitting on the bench in front of this dead man,
Waiting for the ME.
waiting for the ME, and it was just such a surreal moment, because here we have this beautiful sunrise, and it's an appreciation. We see sunrise, sunset, we go about our lives all the time. You really have to take those moments and appreciate it, because it can all be gone just like that.
And the thing that was interesting about that fella, Gino, is that we had just talked to him the previous week.
Yeah.
And
we
now
knew
Gino
him,
and I
yeah.
knew everybody by first name and by street name, all that stuff downtown. And this particular fella, he never gave us a hard time, ever. So he got a ton of discretion in the event we ever did have to speak with him. And here he was, we went on our days off and we come back and then we have this and we're sitting there watching the most amazing sunrise come right through this water feature, this
Yeah.
huge fountain. And it just felt very surreal, as Gene
It
said.
really was, yeah. So
It's so
again, it takes you
interesting.
back and reminds you how precious every moment is. And I mean, you talk about dealing with the trauma of aspect. It's like one lesson that every policeman that I know knows, they might not talk about it, is that appreciation for life, because it can just be gone so fast. So live every moment the best you can.
Truth, brah. I was very fortunate to see you get promoted downtown, and then you went to 3 District, and that's where you're at right now. Do you have any special projects on the go in 3 District? or-
Yeah. It's three's a great. If I couldn't be at 1, 3's a good choice, because it's a lot like you're still dealing with the downtown related issues plus a whole bunch more. But I got a great team, young officers, helping them career path and supporting them, and off the side of my desk, I've run a couple projects. One is the VODP program. So this is a new program from the provincial government. Stands for the Virtual Opioid Dependency Program. So in a nutshell, what it is it's a phone number that police officers can assist an opioid addict in calling, where they can make a direct connection with a doctor who does an assessment with them over the phone right then. Mm-hmm. And then if they meet the criteria, a prescription for an opioid antagonist drug is called in. Suboxone is the drug that is mostly used now, which is a really important drug in assisting opioid addicts in getting clean. It's a great first step. It's not the end-all be-all, but it is a great first step. And so now as frontline officers, we can actually assist them in making that first step. So it's a very exciting program.
Probably going to result in saving a lot of lives.
I would like to think it does, yeah. And it'll start, it allows people to then kind of gain control of their senses, and maybe they can make better choices about getting into therapy or rehab and take those other steps to deal with the root cause of their addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact, Gino, that
exciting.
you're transitioning from all the stuff that you learned over the course of your career, but most importantly with addiction downtown, because both of us were big drug investigators, more interested in that, and then we learned more about addiction, and now you're doing what you're doing. I was just chatting the other day with a lady, and I'm going to give her a shout out. Her name is Sierra Brady. She works at ARC. I'm still learning more about them, but it's an adolescent addictions program. So as I learn more, I want to be able to, I'm going to share it with you, and hopefully
Please
you
do,
can share that with your members.
Yeah, the other exciting thing that's happening in 3 District, well, it's actually happening everywhere, and this is basically beat policing was a downtown concept. Now the service is moving into a program called CERT, which is a community engagement response team. And so it's like beat policing, but it's all throughout the city. And again, it's primarily around dealing with people on the street, addiction, mental illness. Very excited to be involved in that project as it moves forward. So.
Wow. where do we go from there?
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so excited to see. Like, are you going to stick around? Like, you've got 43 years on. Are you going to see projects at the end? What's your plan for the next few years?
I'm starting to slow down.
Yeah?
I am feeling myself slowing down. I turned 60 this year. It's been a great life.
You do
great
not
career.
look that old, brother.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
This one?
Yeah, be gentle.
Yeah, be gentle. Jeez.
Yeah.
I can't be nice to her because then it'll come back to haunt me down the road. Trust me.
You guys.
I like to challenge her. I like to challenge her patience in every way I possibly can.
That's Brennan. Challenge patience.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
So in your time as a paramedic, as a firefighter, as a diver, as a member of STARS, as CPS, do you have any sort of words of wisdom or lessons that you've learned that you would want to pass on to other people?
Yeah. So throughout all that, I've been very engaged in assisting people that want to come into the industry, whatever level that's at. It's a very honorable profession, all of them. You know, whatever you choose to do, helping other people, I don't think there's anything more important than that in the world. And so I would say to people, if you feel that call to serve, do it.
Nice, Gene.
Do it.
Like that.
Because I did.
Yeah.
I did ever since I was a child. I didn't know where it was going to take me.
It's in your DNA.
But I knew that I was called to be part of something bigger and to help people. And I did.
You sure did.
Yeah.
Gene,
Amazing.
I want you to know that you've had a huge impact on me in my career. And I know for a fact, because of the impact you've had on me, you've had that on everybody else. I want to thank you for being with us here today.
Thanks for having me.
It is a
It's
blessing.
been fun.
It's going to be awesome to share a little piece of Gino, the Machino, Jedi Gino, with the public and with the rest of the service. Thank you very much for
pleasure.
being here, and I can't wait to find out what's next. Let's go.
Sounds good.
Thanks
on,
so
brother.
much, Gene.
Thanks, Gino.
gonna-
We're just going to keep talking
We're
now.
gonna keep talking,
Thank you.
attending. Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
Ange.
Yeah, that was awesome. So Gene Newcombe, I feel like him and I have a lot in common in that
He's way more awesome,
in our
Ange.
yes,
He's
but in
way
our
more awesome.
own personal trauma, having
Okay.
to be partners with you for so long. So I feel like I connected with him, and
He's a lot
we
more
made a
patient
lot
than
of
you are,
eye
though.
contact.
He's a
which is
lot more patient. You have like,
like, I
zero
get you.
patience.
I get you. I know, and he has so many. Oh my God, I hate you.
So I
Something
disagree with.
shot out at me.
I disagree with everything you said. And so does the horn.
God, my brain. I think
Back to you.
You broke everything. I don't even know what to do. I hate you so bad.
I love me.
Anyways, I hate you. Anyways, stop it. I hate you. Reset.
You were saying.
Gene.
Yeah.
Gene has so much patience. Over to you. I don't even, my brain.
Okay, you know what? I want to summarize Gino as best I can. I adore that guy. I love that guy. I see him as a buddy, a colleague, a mentor, a father figure. That guy is just beyond amazing. Now, for the people that know Gene out there, knows that Gino tells stories, right? Sometimes he'll tell the same story 100 times. And it usually goes like this. Have I ever told you the story about, and I'll be like, yep. And then away he goes again. Anyway. But I'll tell you right now, by far, the most impactful person that I've worked with on the job in my entire career. I learned a lot from him. I was very lucky that he was patient with me when he had to. He was my sober second thought, as you've had to be lots of times. He has a lot of life experience. And he's done a lot of stuff. And when I think of people that were born to serve, it's that guy. He does it really quiet, and he's very, very humble and unassuming. But the reality is that he's been involved in some big stuff, far beyond any of the stories that we talked about today. For the people that saw that and heard those stories that are current coppers, they can relate to it because they've attended all that stuff too.
Yeah.
But for the public that is actually listening to that stuff, know that that stuff happens in our city every single day in every single district by the men and women on the job. And lots of them don't even get their bricks because they're just doing their job.
Yeah.
The bricks for a life-saving award or for a Chiefs award for whatever that they've done. That stuff happens in the city every single day by the men and women that serve with us, and we're fortunate to have them all. But Gino, I call him Jedi Gino, but he's not a regular Jedi. He's a Jedi Master. There's Yoda, and then there's him, or they're sitting side by side, one or the other. I really value that guy, and I love that guy, and I feel like my job on this program and in recruiting and in life is now complete, that I was able to at least share a small piece of him.
Yeah, he's incredible. I love the little words of wisdom, like, you know, just living that life of service, and that's what the meaning of life is, like, and that leads to happiness. And I think that sunrise story it helps me understand you a little bit, like your obsession with the sunrise. And I think it's so important to see the good sometimes when there's really terrible things happening.
That's really what it comes down to. You may be like knee deep in the suck, whatever the call is, whether you're tired, whether you're freezing, or whether you're just finishing up in the morning, but there's beauty and awesomeness all around us.
Yeah,
and so
I
if
love
we
it.
just stop to appreciate the good stuff while we're immersed in the obstacles and challenges, it makes the day go by a lot better. I just will conclude, and I'll say, as much as I love to bug you, as much as I love to tease you, and I love to go over and above, you are also a G Newcombe to me. I enjoy working with you.
Get out of here.
Okay, I was just kidding. Anyway, over to you.
That's it. I thought that was an amazing show, and I'm super excited for the next one.
Can I get a Ric Flair woo?
No, my ears are broken.
Okay,
That's
over
it.
that. Honk, honk, honk,
I
honk,
hate you.
honk. Let's go.